My next guest is from the biggest Microsoft franchise out there. Mr. Steve Downes, the voice behind the Master Chief, joins me to talk all about Halo and his fantastic career and my childhood hero. How's it going, Steve?
Going great, Rhys. Thanks for having me. And we're down to the home stretch here on Infinite. So you're catching me at a really good time. We're very excited.
Yes, 20 years of Halo recently just came, didn't it? And they did the big announcement of Halo Infinite Multiplayer Beta, which was just really exciting for all of us.
Yeah, there's so much exciting stuff happening with, as you mentioned, the 20th anniversary just being a few days ago, and in the Halo universe here in the next year to come.
Yeah, so how did the role of Master Chief come about? Was it through a mutual friend, or did you see it advertised?
Well, it was. It's in my world, somewhat bizarre. It's obviously the biggest role of my career, and unlike anything else I've ever done in voiceover, it's the only job I never auditioned for. When I was on the radio in Chicago back in, I started there in 97 and finished in 2015. So towards the end of the 90s, Bungie, who was the original creators of Halo, were based in Chicago. And Marty O'Donnell, who cast all the voices and wrote the music, performed much of it in the Bungie games, used to listen to me on the radio. And he called me one time, actually through my agent, and had me read a part in a very small PC game called Septerra Core, and I had a small part in it. And then about a year later, he called back again, and he said, well, we have another game if you're interested in doing it. And I'm pretty sure my response was probably something like, how much does it pay? And off we went. And I came in, and we did an audition. He just said, you're the guy for the role, and here's who the character is, and this is what the story is about, and gave me some direction, and off we went. So it was really one of those serendipitous moments that had a huge impact on my life, that's for sure.
That's really good. Is there any exclusive behind-the-scenes secrets you can share?
Well, not a lot I can share in regards to Halo Infinite, in that we're almost at the finish line here. The only thing I can tell you that may be interesting, part of the reason why we had a delay in getting Infinite out was the pandemic. We were hoping to have it out last year, and due to the pandemic and other reasons, we had to delay it another year. Part of that delay was from a technical standpoint, because all the studios, once the pandemic hit, all the studios were shut down. Normally, I would travel from my home in Florida out to Seattle, Washington, where the studios were closed. So we had to do some retooling that took several months, the result of which was I recorded, I would say, a good last half of my lines for Master Chief in the closet of my bedroom at home. I have a small studio here, but we had to retool it so that it would match audio-wise with what we had done in the professional studio back in Seattle. So it took a while, and it took some equipment and some engineers to make it work, but we finally got it done. But as you are watching the game and you're watching some of the cutscenes in Infinite, know that some of that stuff I did in my pajamas in my closet.
They say the closet's better than the studio.
Yeah, exactly.
So what inspired you or drove your interests in acting?
Well, it really came from a place of music. My passion when I was young was music, and specifically rock and roll. And it really all began, as it did for so many of my generation, it all began with the Beatles. And, once I saw them on television, and that was my passion all the way through grade school and high school and into college. And I had bands and, this and that. And that's what eventually got me into the radio business. I decided that being a drummer in a rock band was probably not the most secure career move I could make in my life. And I don't think my folks were too crazy about the idea either. But I got into radio figuring that was, somewhere to be close to the music and perhaps have something that would be kind of a steady job. And from there, I fell in love with radio, and it was a combination of being close to the music and also being a bit of a ham and being on the radio, and I kind of liked that. And so I did that, for the rest of my career, and from that got into voiceover. It was sort of natural progression to, being on the air as a disc jockey to doing commercial voiceover. I moved out to Los Angeles and got involved in voiceover, primarily commercial. And that was sort of I began with the Beatles and it ended, where we are today.
As like the software.
No, I'm not familiar with that.
Every station must have different software. I always thought it was the same.
Well, I was, when I started Rhys, there was no such thing as software. It was tubes and we kind of did it the old fashioned way. But no, there's a number of different software programs here in the States, but that one I'm not familiar with.
Okay, that's fine, no problem. Is there any particular person that drives your passion for acting or even in radio hosting?
Yeah, well, I would say, since it sort of began with me with radio, there were certain, people on the air, some of them legendary, some of them perhaps less than legendary. But, when I got in to the radio business, what we called in the States here, freeform radio was just getting started. Freeform, it was also called progressive rock, acid rock, underground rock, where it was basically a disc jockey walking into a studio with a handful of records and playing a bunch of stuff that nobody had ever heard of. And that was the beginning of the progressive rock, underground rock. In this country was a guy by the name of Tom Donahue, who started the first FM underground station in San Francisco back in the mid 60s. And then, I was living in the Midwest at the time, and I would hear, other disc jockeys, doing similar type stuff and being introduced to all this great music from, Jethro Tull and the Jefferson Airplane and the Beatles and Stones and Zeppelin and, all this stuff that was not being played on the regular commercial stations. And I not only fell in love with the music, but with the people who were presenting the music and their take on it and the stories they would tell. And so it was those guys that got me, helped me develop my particular style in terms of radio. And then when it moved into voiceover, one of my big influences really was a guy by the name of Don LaFontaine, who was the movie trailer guy here in the States. So anytime you saw a movie trailer, a commercial for a film, if there was a voiceover on it, it was Don LaFontaine. He did all of it. And so he was my idol. I thought he was, that I wanted to be just like him, even though I never got into movie trailers. I think I did one or two, but it never really developed. She is also a voice actor, and I met her doing voiceover, and she was a very successful voice talent in the Midwest and really nationwide for many years. And one of the first times we ever met was in the voice booth. We were both cast to do this commercial. I don't remember what it was for, but I remember thinking when I was in the voice booth with her that I was with the big kids now. And so much so that I ended up marrying her. But she kind of, showed me some of the more sophisticated techniques, voice techniques and voiceover techniques in the business. And like I said, ended up being a big influence on me.
Like practicing voice lines, etc., how to act and things like that. I thought that would be good.
Yeah, we would do that. Yeah, I mean, she would, often, coach me sometimes. We would coach each other, but I think she was the far better coach than I was. And but yeah, because you learn that in voice acting, it's the thing that you have to get away from is not concentrating so much on the sound of your voice, is concentrating on what's coming from your heart. And a lot of people who get into voice or something like that, and what really matters is where that voice is coming from inside you, and by that I mean from your heart, and developing a real character, for who whether you're doing the voice of a video game character or you're doing the voice in a commercial. It's got to come from a real place, and that's the skill of the really talented voice actor people, and the really successful ones are the ones that understand that you have to, the words that come out of your mouth have to be believable. Whatever it is that you're trying to convey. And if you can do that, then you're on your way to a successful career.
So do you think that people need experience in theatre or general acting to be a good voice actor?
Yeah.
Do you feel like maybe you don't? Or, how do you feel about that?
I definitely think when people ask me about how to get into the business, one of the things that I, and a lot of voice actors will say is, in fact, my wife's background is theater. She is a stage actor and, has done that for many years. But that kind of training, for the very reasons that I said, is because you have to develop, when you're given lines, and like I said, even if it's free, if you're selling, it has to come from a real place. And the theater training can give that to you, especially improv work, because so oftentimes when you go in to audition for a part, you're seeing the script for the very first time, and you have maybe 5 minutes to prepare for it. It's not like in most cases they send you the script, a week ahead of time, and you have time to research it and work on it and practice it. Most of the time you're getting it right when you walk into the booth. So you got to be able to think on your feet and, be able to develop a character pretty quick, and improv work is helpful for that.
How much time do they normally give you to learn lines or things like that?
Well, the good news about voice acting is you don't really have to learn the lines, because you don't have to memorize it, because you're in a sound studio. But when I first, like for Halo Combat Evolved, I saw the script the day I went in to record, and I didn't even have when back in those days they didn't even have a rendering for me to see what Master Chief looked like, who the character was, and what the Halo story was, and we based it off that. With each successive game, we got a little more and more involved in that area, to the point where when 343 took it over and Halo 4 came out, I was able to meet with the writers and the director, and I did have a lot of time to, not only look at my lines and stuff, but really look at the story and the script and see where it was going, so that I had a lot more time to be able to prepare, sort of the proper approach for, at least a starting point for where I wanted to go.
Yeah, Halo's like such a massive franchise. In your opinion, how can someone maintain their mental well-being in this industry? Well,
I think there's two things that we're talking about when you talk about maintaining, a mental balance, is what I would call it, in this business and in show business in general, is that, show business is full of rejection. You're rejected far more times than you are accepted. Many, many, many more times than you're accepted. And he said, my mom auditions. And he was actually right. That's what we do for a living. Unfortunately, you don't get paid to audition, but you audition 99 times, and maybe on that 100th time you get the job. The point of it is that you have to have the toughness of, being able to handle rejection. Yet you also have to have the sensitivity to let a character in when you're trying to prepare for a role, whether it's voice acting or stage acting or film and television. So it seems dichotomous that on the one hand, you have to be sensitive to allow those emotions to come out of you. And yet you got to be tough to not let it kill you when you didn't get the job. And, it's sort of a tricky balance. The ones who can find that balance are the ones who, can hang on in the business. You can't let it get you down, kind of thing. And then in terms of how it relates to doing a character like Master Chief, and, one of the good things about it is I get to meet a lot of the fans. It's great on the one hand because that influences my approach to the character when the next time I record. You also get a sense of in the case of Halo, how much the game can mean to people on a very, very deep and personal level. And the first time that I got exposed to that, I was taken aback by it because my initial reaction was, come on, man, it's just a video game. We're just having fun here. But you realize that for various reasons, it can be a lifesaver for some people. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard a story that would be similar to something like, this game saved my life, or it got me through a very dark period in my life. And, when you hear that, it really impacts me, in terms of, I don't know, I would end up approaching the game in a deeper level, knowing that it meant so much to so many people.
Yeah, the game is some sort of escape for the fans. Recently, someone who posted on the Let's Finish This Fight Facebook page that I'm an admin on, unfortunately committed suicide, and his friend was posting about it, saying that his friend recently passed from suicide, and the whole Halo community came together and was all saying rest in peace, and that's the good thing about the Halo community, is that it brings everyone together. And I always hear these stories about people are like, oh, I always used to bring my Xbox round.
Yeah.
And we always used to sit together and play. It gives me goosebumps even talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And, so those stories end up, and I know Jen Taylor, who is the voice of Cortana, we do a lot of these things together, and she feels the same way, is that it's very impactful, and it gives us a deeper understanding of the game and the story, and a better appreciation of the fans who play the game. So it's sort of almost like a feedback loop between us and the fans.
Is there any question that you want to be asked that no interviewer has asked before?
Oh, that's a tough one, because I feel like I've been asked about every possible question, but I suppose, and I don't know for sure if nobody's ever asked me this, but I don't think I get asked a lot, is, what motivates me in going into the studio to record, and specifically talking about recording for Master Chief and Halo. And really what it is, it's not the money, although the money's nice. It's not the recognition, although the recognition is nice. What is really rewarding for me is to be proud of the work. And the fact that, and it's not often in the voice acting community that you get to do something, repeatedly for over 20 years. And so you have a long lens to look at the work that you've done. And, so what motivates me every time I've ever gone into the studio, see the end result, that I'm proud of the work, that I've done. So that's my primary motivation. I want to feel good about it. I want to feel good about it.
How does it feel like knowing like I voiced him? Like, how does it feel?
Well, it feels great. But I mean, to this day, when I go back and listen to, some of the cutscenes in Combat Evolved or Halo 2, for example, both of those sessions, when we did those sessions, I had a cold for both of them. And I can hear it, so plainly when I go back and listen, and watch those cutscenes. And I'm thinking, oh, God, I wish we could do that again. And oftentimes, we are our own worst critic, and many times I'll hear and watch things that we've done and think, wow, I would have liked to have had another crack at that. If you feel like you gave it everything you got and you didn't hold back, and whatever it is, then you can walk away saying, I've done the best that I can do, and hopefully it will translate into something good for the person who's on the other end of it.
Well said, well said. Has 343 recorded any behind the scenes? Have you doing the voice lines for the game?
We did, yes. I mean, there's some things out there for Halo 4 that were behind the scenes stuff, I remember. And also actually for Halo 3, I believe. Although they never showed my face. I remember they only showed my mouth. But with Halo 4, we did some things. And we also did some things with Halo 5, although I'm not sure any of that ever saw the light of day. Was still going into a recording studio. I felt like there was a camera there and there might have been some recording behind the scenes. But to be honest with you, first of all, it's been a while ago. And second of all, once I'm in the studio and my director and Master Chief, and that's all I see, and I don't really remember if there was, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was. Unfortunately for the second half of it, there wasn't room for a camera crew in my closet, so I'm pretty sure there was nobody there for that.
Yeah, I find it really interesting to go back and watch the behind the scenes from Halo 2. It's really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it very is. Yeah, those are good. That's good stuff.
So, what does the day in the life of Steve Downes look like? Do you have any daily routines?
Well, it's pretty basic, to be honest with you. I live down here in Florida, and my current passion is golf, and I play an obscene amount of that. Not getting any better at it. I've disproven the theory that the more you play, the better you get. That's not necessarily true. We're currently sort of we came down here from Chicago, which is where we were for the last, where I was for the last 14, 15 years. And now we're, I don't know if you've ever been to Florida, but it gets pretty hot here in the summertime. So we're looking at, perhaps getting another place up north again for the summer, but that's and then we still do some voice acting. We go to a lot of theater here. There's where we live here in Sarasota. There's a pretty active theater community, and my wife does some plays, and we attend a lot of theater and are involved in the theater community here. So that's a lot of fun. But that's pretty much a day in the life. And then, hopefully the occasional voice acting job. Yeah.
Oh, nice. So what kind of theatre shows do you like watching the most?
Well, there's a company here, they're probably one of the best in the country, and they do some tremendous work down here. Now it's been shut down for the last year or so, and they're just now going back to live audiences again. And as a matter of fact, we're going to see a performance of Hair that I'm looking forward to. That'll take us back a few years. There's another performance that another company's doing that I think has probably played in England. I know it's played down in Australia, called Come From Away, which is a musical that involves when 9/11 hit, and hundreds and hundreds of airplanes were grounded in Newfoundland. And there's a whole story about that that's quite fascinating. And looking forward to seeing that here in the very near future. So that, we're seeing, some local productions and some national productions that come through town. So it's a lot of fun for us.
Is there any shows you'd like to recommend to the audience?
Yeah, there's a couple. One is on Apple TV called Foundation, which is a series based on the books of science fiction writer Isaac Asimov, and I've been following that series, and it's quite interesting. And then I'm sort of a science fiction guy. I like science fiction a lot. There's another series also on Apple TV called Invasion that the title is sort of self-explanatory. The aliens come and disrupt the place, but it's an interesting take on it. It's sort of not your usual take on a well-worn story. It kind of approaches it from a couple of different angles. There's also a series that we just finished, or that we're just finishing, on Hulu called Dope Sick, which is a story based on a lot of people getting addicted on opioids, primarily Oxycontin, and the company that pushed that. And it's a fascinating series. Michael Keaton stars in it. And the one I'm really looking forward to that's coming out next week is the Peter Jackson produced Beatles documentary Get Back, which is about the last really the last days of the Beatles and when they were recording for the Let It Be album. And a film was made of it, but apparently there was 60 hours of film that had never seen the light of day. And Peter Jackson was given the task of assembling it. And I've seen some early rushes of it, and it looks fantastic. So I'm very, very excited about seeing that. And it's supposed to be out, I think, Thanksgiving weekend. So we're looking forward to that.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
What platform is it on, sorry?
It's called Disney Plus, and I'm not sure what that translates to. My guess is it'll be in England something perhaps a little more accessible.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be available on Disney Plus here as well. We've got Disney Plus.
Oh, okay. All right. So that's what it is.
What other character from any other franchise would you voice, and why?
That's been a question I have been asked, and I have to be honest with you, Rhys. They're really, I've been blessed to do one of the most iconic video game characters there is, and I really want for no other character to do. I've thought about that, and I've tried to come up with some clever answers, but I'll be honest. I mean, in fact, I think being the voice of Master Chief has limited me in terms of being able to do other characters. Two things. I don't have a wide range of voices like some very talented voice actors do, who, you can hear them on one project and then hear them on another project and never know it's the same person. They have that kind of a range. I don't have that kind of range. I'm a bit of a one-trick pony, and I can do a few different things, but it's kind of what you see is what you get, or what you hear is what you get, I should say. And if I had a nickel for every time I've auditioned for a Star Wars character in the Star Wars video game franchise, I'd be a rich man if I had a nickel for every one of those auditions I did and never got. But I, certainly am not complaining, because if you're going to be stuck doing one character, to have it be Master Chief, I consider myself a pretty lucky guy. So there really is none, that I even kind of, fantasize about. The only other one that comes to mind is, and it's not because I would want to do it, but I just so appreciate the work that he did, was Keith David's work as the Arbiter in the Halo series. I'm a huge fan of his work, both as a film actor and as a voiceover. And I just thought the work, in fact, I was just watching some things, going back and watching some of the old cutscenes from 2 and 3, when the Arbiter was playing a primary role, in comparison to the job that he did. But I sure appreciate, hearing him and listening to it.
Oh yeah, Keith David's really good. Yeah, I hope to get him on the show sometime. Yeah.
He'd be great.
So, what characteristics of Master Chief do you share?
Well, the one that comes to mind immediately is we are both very lucky. Halsey talks about this a lot in both in the game and in some of the books, where she talks about the Chief's origin story and how she came upon choosing John to be what he became. And one of the early characteristics that she recognized, there's a story, I think it's in The Fall of Reach, where she talks about, it's been a long time since I've read it, so I may not have this exactly right, but she talks about flipping a coin and having him call heads or tails. And so you figure that's kind of a 50-50 proposition. If you do it 100 times, more often than not, 50 times you're going to be right and 50 times you're going to be wrong. And what she recognized in him was that he had that intangible thing that we call luck. And I've seen that in my career, both with, being in the right place at the right time to be able to do Master Chief, but not only that, but just in a lot of phases of my life where I feel like I'm a very lucky person. And the other characteristic might be tenacity. What makes Master Chief is he is, in my opinion, his tenacity. He doesn't give up and he doesn't, roll over. And I would like to think that I have somewhat of that quality myself. And it kind of goes back to your question about, maintaining a mental balance in this business. Tenacity comes into play there, and you have to be able to take the hard knocks, and get back up and live to fight another day. And I would like to think that I share some of that with the Chief, although I think he's got a lot more of it than I do.
Last but not least, without giving anything away and without obviously breaking NDA, we don't want that to happen, how could you describe Infinite in one word?
Oh, wow. In one word. I don't know that I can describe it in one word, but I would describe it as both familiar and groundbreaking. I like to just think of how this is going to come off, is that people who have been with the franchise from the beginning are going to find a familiar, some people might describe it as nostalgia. I wouldn't say it's nostalgic because it's not that, but it is familiar and it will make sense to you, both from a visual standpoint and from a story standpoint. You will be able to see a through line from the very beginning of the Halo series to up to, Guardians. And for people who have never played the game before, never played Halo at all, they will find what I would call a groundbreaking quality to it. That's something that maybe they've never experienced in a video game before. So the point will be, and I think this is what they were trying to go for, is to appeal have been with the franchise from the very beginning, and people who haven't, who maybe have dabbled in it, maybe played one or maybe played Halo Combat Evolved and Halo 2 and then moved away and moved away from it. Now are coming back and might be interested in it. Those people will be fine. You won't be lost. So it's those. That's as close as I can come to one word. Is that I think there'll be something for both those types of people.
Yeah, well said. Well said. So, is there any other projects that you've got coming up that you would like to plug?
There are, some that I can't talk about, but that I think are going to be exciting. That will be related to what's happening here at the moment. And then, as maybe this before we got on the air, the whole video game convention, business, if you will, that took a year-long hiatus because of the pandemic, is coming back, and so it's nice to get back and be able to be with the people and talk about the game and get their reactions to stuff, and that's gearing up again. And I have one coming up, so I'll do my little plug here in January. In Sacramento, California, it's a convention called SAC Anime that I've been to a couple of times in the past. You are out in the Northern California area and would want to come by, well, I'd love to see you. And then we have a number of them planned throughout the year. So I think it's going to be, for Halo fans and people involved in the game, I think it's going to be a very, very busy and exciting year coming up in 2022.
Yes, you should definitely go and see him.
Indeed.
And last but not least, where can everyone find you, Steve?
I'm on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and YouTube and all the usual places. So, if you just go, just put in my name and it'll come up. And we'll hopefully have some exciting news for you in the very near future too. So, by all means, check it out.
Thank you, Steve. Halo Infinite will be released on December 8th on Xbox Series X and also on PC. Thank you so much, Steve.
Rhys, a pleasure. I enjoyed talking with you, and best of luck to you.
Thank you.